Alright everyone, let's talk about taking Red Escanor to his full potential with the upcoming update. And I wanted to talk about the Mono Red team and some things that you guys can do to prepare with the various units that are used in this team so that when Red Escanor does come out, you guys will just be able to see those crazy results right away without having to do this prep work afterwards. So of course, I wanted to bring this back up for those of you guys that don't know. I know I showed this in the last video, but I wanted to show this image right here because this actually has Merlin and Red Escanor, and also the text right below it that says meet them all in the 7.7 update. So it is coming, and it's coming very soon. So let's get into the actual Mono Red team, and these are the units that are going to work the best with Red Escanor. Now, there's a couple of crazy things that makes Red Escanor just such an unbelievably powerful unit. First of all, he's Escanor, but then taking a look at his actual passive here, it's absolutely insane, especially for really short turn format type content like PvP, of course. Like 3 turns in PvP is a lot, and a lot is going to happen in 3 turns. So having a 50% increase to the HP related stats of Red Escanor at the start of every PvP match, that is absolutely huge. Like huge. And this is not just HP, by the way. HP related stats, it even says, when I scroll over here, it's going to include recovery, regeneration, lifesteal. That's a big one right there. So he's going to get all that extra lifesteal from this passive as well. And of course, HP. So this is an incredible passive for short content like PvP specifically. But that's not the only thing about him that makes him really good. Next up is going to be his single target card, which is 180%, 270, and 450% damage, which at first glance, it might seem a little bit low for rank 3, considering you might see some cards that have like up to 600%, but you have to keep in mind that this also has Amplify on it, which is going to give him a damage buff for each buff that he actually has on himself. And that is indeed going to include his passive as well. So that right off the bat is going to give him an Amplify buff for additional damage, but there are many other sources that you can actually get additional damage to this skill as well. So the combination of his incredibly powerful passive, his single target attack, the passive synergizing with his single target card to gain bonus from the Amplify, and he also has a utility card as well, which is going to have the capability of depleting ult gauge. It's an AoE, so he does have that hybrid of a single target card and an AoE card. And then, of course, getting into his base stats, they're absolutely crazy because, of course, he is Escanor. You can see that he's got the 80% starting pierce rate. But now let's get back to this actual Amplify card here and talk about why Red Escanor works so incredibly well with 2 very specific units in the team. So you are going to get more damage on his card based off of the number of buffs that he has. Well, who else is another red unit that provides lots of buffs? That's right, it's Arthur. And on top of that, he's also got his passive here, which is going to give even more HP related stats, even more lifesteal, and just, you can see how all this stuff is just piling on top to really make a completely insane team. So, of course, Red Arthur is going to be used for his buff ability right here. You can see increases the basic stats of one ally by 20% for 2 turns, basic stats of all allies by 20% for 2 turns, and then, of course, you've got his rank 3 card, which is going to remove debuffs from all allies and increases their basic stats by 30% and grants debuff immunity for 3 turns. So you're going to get several additional stacks of buffs from Arthur's card right here, which of course is going to get applied to Red Escanor, and what that's going to do is that is going to trigger the Amplify on his single target card, and you are going to see absolutely crazy damage numbers with all of this stuff added on top of it. Remember, you're also going to be getting an additional Amplify stack just from his passive unique alone for the first 3 turns. So that doesn't include the extra HP related stats or just the extra base stats. That also is going to give you more survivability, more damage. Like, it really does all just pile together and give you a crazy team. Like, the synergy with this team is absolutely unheard of. And of course, you also have Gother, and Gother is very well known for this card right here, which is going to rank up cards. And of course, you're probably going to want to do this on Arthur in order to get a better one of his buff cards here, which is going to give Escanor more Amplify stacks and give him more damage. And all this stuff just adds together to give you a crazy team that is not just going to do an insane amount of damage, but is also going to have an insane amount of HP. Like, this buff is going to make Escanor so tanky. Then you've got the Arthur passive as well. You've got the base stats. I mean, it's just really, you wrap it all together, it's a crazy, crazy team. So the PvP meta is definitely going to shift, and Escanor is going to completely tear through units like Valenti as well. So now, of course, the sub-unit is kind of interesting. Now, I will bring up Red King because this is the one that I wanted to use as the example in this video, just because we have Red King's banner actually out right now. However, I think there are plenty of other sub-units that you can use. It's obviously going to depend on what most people are actually using for their teams. Like, as we first transition into Red Escanor, you're probably going to notice that there's still going to be a lot of people using Pierce-type teams, at least for a while. And then as time goes on and Red Escanor just crushes all those Pierce teams, less and less people will use Pierce, and there will be less reason to actually use Red King. So you could see, in a weird way, it's like there's an equilibrium, right? It's going to start off with lots of Pierce teams, but over time, the need to actually use Red King, it might lower. And this is just something that everyone's going to have to keep their eye on when it comes to what units they're actually seeing in PvP, and adjust this if they want to later. But you can always use Red King because his passive is just absolutely incredible. They did end up renaming it as well, I believe. Reduces all enemies' pierce rate by half, and also reduces the value of additional increase or decrease by half in PvP. This is still the old description. I believe the in-game description is a little bit different. Either way, this passive is going to slice through a bunch of pierce that your enemy has, which of course counters pierce teams, but it's also just going to give you more survivability because the lower pierce the enemies have, the less damage that they are going to do. So, not a bad unit. There's plenty of other sub-units that you can use as well, and maybe I'll have another video. If you guys enjoy this, I'll talk about some other units that you can actually use in the 4th slot with the mono red team, which is going to be Escanor, Gother, and Red Arthur, of course. So now let's talk about some of the things that you might want to do to prepare so that when Red Escanor comes out, you can get right to and have the fullest potential with this team. And this is just going to be, some of the little maintenance work of, making sure that your units are up to date in game. A really big one that I think is going to be really easy for a lot of people to forget is food, especially for units like Escanor and Gother specifically, and Arthur. There are so many different versions of Arthur and Gother. I know Gother has 3 to be sure, and you want to make sure that not only is your red Gother at the maximum affinity for food, but his other 2 versions also are at maximum affinity because they are going to share costumes. So let me just show you guys an example here. If I go to my Gothers, multiple Gothers, of course I've got my red Gother at his maximum affinity, which is going to end up giving me my costume piece, but also, very importantly, is you have to go through and make sure that you've got the affinity maxed out for all the units that are in the same pool that share costumes. So I've got my green Gother right here, who also is at max affinity, and is going to share this outfit right there. And then my last Gother, hopefully I don't struggle to find. Let's see, green, red, where is blue? He's somewhere around here. Oh, here he is. Also going to be at maximum affinity, and they are going to share costumes. So Escanor, of course, when Red Escanor comes out, is going to share costumes with Green Escanor. You've got Arthur. Arthur, of course, shares costumes with Blue Arthur, right? Probably not a unit that many people have actually worked on. I did, because for the longest time, I didn't have many copies of Red Arthur, so I was using Blue Arthur for the association. Just make sure that you go through and you do this for your Red Escanor, your Green Escanor, let's see, red, blue, and green Gother, red and blue Arthur, and then of course King as well. If you are going to be using King as your 4th, then you want to go through and make sure that you do this, of course, for your red, blue, and your green Kings, and get all of those outfits by maxing them out. You're also going to get a decent amount of gems by doing this as well, but it's not just the outfits, of course. Before you work on your affinity, make sure that they are at least all UR. You don't have to limit break them and take them all the way up to 80, especially the ones that you are not going to use. Like, you don't need to take Blue Arthur to level 80, but you do want to get them up to SSR and up to UR so that you get the SSR and UR costumes. Really important, especially for the Gothers, for the Arthur, because they have several versions that are going to be starting grade SR and not starting grade SSR. So those are two really big things that you want to do. Of course, make sure everybody is awakened and all that just general prep work so that when you do actually head into content, you aren't going to have to work through all that stuff. So now is a really good time to do so. If you need gold, we actually have a half stamina books event coming up, so great time to get gold for all that stuff as well. And make sure that if you are going to commit to, you know, increasing the ultimate for additional combat class, kind of have all that stuff figured out as well, especially for let's see, you know, Arthur. Arthur's probably the easiest unit out of all of these here to get additional copies of, right? Because you're going to be able to get him with your gold coins and not your platinum coins. So not necessarily for his actual ultimate here, but just for the combat class. You know, the more that you are, I guess, a hardcore player, the more important it is to work on this stuff that I'm talking about here at the end of the video. The stuff that everybody wants to do is get them up to UR, work on their food, and also make sure that you have their associations as well. Very, very important for Escanor, for Gother, for Arthur, and for King. If you don't have the SSR, or I guess the starting grade SSR versions of these at, you know, maxed out ultimates, it's probably going to be better to use the SR versions that are maxed out on ultimates to get the 10% additional stats. Now, I think the point where it becomes worth using the SSR version is at around 7 or 8 copies, or 8%, sorry. So that would be, what is that, 2 or 3 copies of them. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if you only have the SSRs at 1 out of 6, but you've got the SR versions at 6 out of 6, you probably want to use the SR versions for the associations for the time being. So I think I've thrown enough information in this video. Obviously, plenty of other stuff to talk about, including other 4th slot units that you can use in addition to Red King, but I'm going to leave it here and maybe talk about more important stuff you want to know about this in the coming days. So if you guys enjoyed this video and you want more videos like this in the future with this type of information, consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to leave a like as well. It means more than you can imagine, so thank you so much to all of you who decide to do that. And more Grand Cross Global videos should be popping up on the screen right about now, or in the suggested videos to your right or below. Feel free to check them out, but if not, until next time, take care everyone, and this is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.